A Day in May, Daniel Greenfield's Friday Roundup for Friday, May 18th, 2012. First part, Disunion Squared. I passed through Union Square in Manhattan on Wednesday. The park on the square happens to be the fallback point of Occupy Wall Street, but the OWS crowd was a little hard to spot. There were a few vendors in the business of selling radical T-shirts and pins, proceeds to either benefit the occupation or them personally, but the rest of the occupation was hard to find. The breakdancers working for tips weren't with OWS, but what about the clown with pink hair? The men playing chess for money obviously weren't. That was too capitalist an activity. The NYU students sitting around and drinking soda? The guy playing jazz on a sax? The halal mafia vendor sending smoke and a burnt smell from his cart? The dog walkers? The artists drawing cartoons of tourists? The vendors at the farmer's market unloading ostrich meat and gourmet goat cheese? The signs reading General Strike May 1st and Stop Everything are still pasted to walls, but the first has come and gone, and there was more of a showing in Moscow than in New York City. Some of the signs urged everyone not to come into work or school or even do housework, but defying the housework strike, I vacuumed my rug on the first. For now, a giant inflatable rat hasn't shown up outside my window. Finally, I encountered a grossly obese man in union gear with a white hard hat and a sign around his neck ranting about billionaire war criminals or something equally stupid. I was going to snap a photo, but then I realized that would justify him standing there. OWS is a media-driven phenomenon. Ignore it and it goes away. I passed him by as he argued feverishly with a man in a business suit about something or other. Near the curb, the breakdancers were hitting their rhythm, and Mexican illegal aliens were selling T-shirts with a picture of armed Indians, text reading Homeland Security and something about repelling terrorists for hundreds of years. It's not the type of shirt you ever see a Mexican or actual Indian wearing, but some of the more radical white college kids probably love it. After September 11th, the leftists occupied Union Square for a month or two. I saw them on that very day, writing up peace signs and cautioning against vengeance. Most people paid them no attention. The weeks wore on, and they scrawled peace signs on the statue of George Washington, marking Evacuation Day, and did the usual Occupy Wall Street antics, long before there was an OWS or anyone who was paying to them, or was paying attention to them. Eventually, they got evicted, and the statue was cleaned up. Living in New York City, you learn to deal with pests of all kinds, but the thing about pests is that they eventually go away. Sick transit, OWS. Take the A train, hook up with Metro North, and go home. Next part, occupy cameras. But in the meantime, OWS is making friends and influencing people by attacking photographers who take their picture, and there's a hyperlink there. Takeaway quote is, "The protesters' argument is righteous, but is also silly," said Jose Martin, a 30-year-old activist and Marxist who has been involved in militant actions for over a decade and attended the Wildcat March. He says, "Still there is some philosophical legitimacy to what these people are saying. We're not here to legitimize the state. If journalists are willing to incriminate those engaged in illegal actions, it's very difficult for me to suggest that they shouldn't be angry with the photographer." Read that last sentence again and you can grasp the incredible sense of entitlement on the left when it comes to the media. And the only people to blame for that are in the media. Next part, about that Caliphate. Remember that Caliphate everyone keeps talking about? Well, it might kind of be here already. It's a story that most have overlooked. The 32nd summit of the Gulf Cooperation Council may be remembered as the dawn of the Caliphate, with the Saudi proposal to accelerate the union of the 6 GCC states likely to dramatically change the region. The union is being described as EU-style, but in practice it would be a larger version of the United Arab Emirates, a federation of tribal monarchies. The combined entity would have a $1 trillion GDP and some 35% of the world's oil reserves, giving it immeasurable influence on the global stage. And that nucleus of power and wealth would be used to consolidate its influence over the rest of the region and the world. If the GCC integrates Yemen, it will be able to turn the Persian Gulf into the Arabian Gulf, and if it integrates Libya, Sudan, and Iraq, then it will have a combined population of 100 million and be able to approach the 50% world oil reserves marker. There's more in my piece on the rise of the Saudi superstate, including the collision between 2 or 3 caliphates, one run by the Muslim Brotherhood and one that is a projection of Iranian power. Next part, fun with numbers. I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but French reports of overseas voting claim that Sarkozy received 92% of the vote in Israel, Hollande received 82% of the vote in the Palestinian Authority. And that was before Hollande appointed Christian Taubira as the Justice Minister. Good luck with that burqa ban. 3 Arab Muslims have also been appointed to the cabinet. Najat Belkacem Valod for women's rights, Yamina Ben-Gwiwi for French speakers abroad, and Kader Arif for veterans. I'll have lots more on this in an upcoming front page article. Next part, ugly things. I had been holding back this piece for a while, as the topic was an ugly one, and I had known Rabbi Avi Weiss and respected him, despite his liberal politics, as someone who genuinely cared about the Jewish people. That is not at all the case with the institution operating under his name, which is waging a war against the Jewish people. This piece wasn't a lot of fun to write, it's less fun to deal with, but it concerns the left-wing infiltration of the Orthodox Jewish community, which is unfortunately not paying attention to what is going on. What am I talking about? If you've seen articles on Ori Litzedek, then you may already have some idea. What you may not know are some of the people behind it. The Rosh Beit Medrash of Ori Litzedek, Elisheva Goldberg, is an anti-Israel activist who works for George Soros' New America Foundation as an assistant to Peter Beinart and a contributor to his Open Zion blog. The former compliance officer and current director of Tav HaYosher engagement at Ori Litzedek, Hadass Dasi Fruchter, is a J Street and Occupy Wall Street supporter. And the Ori Litzedek board includes a member of J Street's finance committee. Or what Ori Litzedek actually is. Ori Litzedek is a pale imitation of its true inspiration, Jewish Funds for Justice, and it is arguably nothing more than JFJ working the Orthodox side of the Jewish communal street. Ori Litzedek has coordinated events with Jewish Funds for Justice, its literature has featured JFJ content, and its leading personnel are for the most part either veterans of Jewish Funds for Justice or the American Jewish World Service, another left-wing organization funded by George Soros. Ori Litzedek largely depends on grant money from the same foundations that fund these two groups. That raises the question of whether Ori Litzedek is anything but a front for JFJ and AJWS activism under an Orthodox brand. I discussed some of this in the article, The Left-Wing Movement to Hijack Kosher Food. But in the long run, Ori Litzedek cannot be dealt with without dealing with Yeshivat Chovevei Torah and its left-wing agenda to keep stamping out community organizers who work to undermine the Jewish community while calling themselves rabbis. Next part, the 1%. When Mahmoud Abbas returned to the Palestinian territories after the signing of the Oslo Accords, I gave him $25,000 at the request of the late President Yasser Arafat, Rashid claimed. Today, he and his sons have palaces and property estimated at 15 million Jordanian dinars, approximately $21 million, in Palestine, Jordan, Tunisia, and other places, and that was a quote. And then Greenfield writes, I buried the lead there. The lead is that the Palestinian Authority has been diverting millions to Israeli-Arab political parties, which raises some interesting questions and nullifies any claim that the PA isn't aspiring to take the whole country, not just Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. For all the legitimate criticisms of past Israeli PMs that can be made, including on corruption issues, they don't seem to have managed to buy themselves palaces and $21 million worth of property using American tax dollars. It's not because they aren't personally corrupt. Olmert certainly was, but because Israel is an actual functional country with checks and balances which limits the abuses of even the highest official. Arafat and Abbas had nearly unlimited power. They can all buy themselves mansions because there is no actual country there, just a bunch of militias and their leaders dividing up the pie. Next part, Obama born everywhere and of every faith. So as it turns out, Obama was born in Hawaii when he wasn't born in Kenya. He's a Christian when he isn't a Muslim, and he is so very many things to all people. His bio, of course, just one of those funny accidents like everything else. Forget about composite girlfriends. Like most con artists, Obama has an entire composite identity that shifts depending on the audience that he is targeting at any given time. But this seems like even bigger news, and this is a hyperlink. According to Klein's book, Wright told... and that's Edward Klein's book, Wright told Obama, well, you already know the Muslim piece of your background. You studied Islam, didn't you? Obama replied, yeah, Rev, I studied Islam, but help me understand Christianity, because I already know Islam. Asked if he converted Obama from Islam to Christianity, Wright said, that's hard to tell. I think I convinced him that it was okay for him to make a choice in terms of who he believed Jesus is, and I told him it was really okay and not a put-down on the Muslim part of his family or his Muslim friends. Wright is, for all his repulsiveness, a credible enough figure. He's never hidden what he is. Obama used Wright as his Christian mentor until Wright became a liability. Christian theology is my specialty, but looking at whether any of Obama's statements on Jesus violated Muslim beliefs might be telling. This sort of thing has been noted before. Muslims do believe that Jesus was a prophet who will come back and break the cross, but they don't believe that he was the Son of God or that he rose from the dead. Oddly enough, the Muslim version of the birth of Jesus appears to be conflated with the biblical account of the birth of Ishmael. It's likely that they just cut and pasted Ishmael onto Jesus. Further follow-up on the bio, this is a separate part. Further follow-up on the bio at Western Rifle Shooters with commentary from Ann Barnhart, and an important point is made. The Breitbart group and the hot air fools, that's Ed Morrissey and Allah Pundit, once again are pissing all over people who dare point out that Obama's eligibility to hold the office of the presidency is seriously in question. They are doing this in the same breath while reporting this very story, which proves beyond any doubt whatsoever that Obama is a liar and con artist. Why? Why do these conservatives refuse to engage reality on this point? Ann gives her answer, and I partly agree with it, but I would also add the factor of timidity. The media has succeeded in defining birther as something that Republicans don't want to be, and the message from the top down, and the message goes from the top down. To avoid being classed as a birther, you can only report this kind of story by firmly stating that you are in no way questioning where Obama was born. You're just questioning why he lied about where he was born. I see no reason why anything that Obama says should be accepted as true, or why any documents that a notorious liar and con artist and his accomplices provide should automatically be treated as genuine. There's a basic paradox here. If we truly believe, for example, that this administration shipped guns to Mexico to subvert the Second Amendment, or that it covered for Black Panther Party members engaged in voter intimidation, then we believe that it is completely unprincipled and does not abide by any rules. That means it is capable of lying about anything and everything. Analyzing documents and photos is not in my area of expertise, which is why I don't run pieces on it. But my position is simple enough. My position is simply not to accept anything coming from these people as genuine or credible until it is conclusively established as such by independent voices. The end.